This is the Apparelist podcast, designed to bring you real-life conversation about high-level topics relevant to the decorated apparel community. Hey, Apparelist family. I hope you're all ready for this episode of the Apparelist podcast, where we look at high-level topics through an approachable, applicable lens. Today's guest is one of the minds behind arguably one of the most popular t-shirt brands of all time. He's here to talk to us about the journey through extreme growth, the price it comes at, and he even has a few manageable tips to all of you other owners, CEOs, managers out there on how to successfully manage your own company. Please help me welcome Mark Lane, owner of Coed Sportswear. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. A few weeks ago, our brand director, Chip Danby, told me about you and that you had this great book coming out. And, I was a child of the 90s, but I was, fairly young in the 90s. So I wasn't really sure what the story is here. And then I read your book and I was introduced to the Coed Naked brand. For any of you listeners out there, Coed Naked, if you're around in the 90s, you probably know what I'm talking about. But Mark, what's really interesting about this brand is just about everything is interesting about it. So I wanted to talk to you today, let you introduce yourself a little bit to our Apparelist audience and tell us about your history.
Yeah, sure. Great. I appreciate it. I've just a little bit about me. I'm born and raised in New Hampshire. I grew up, went to the University of New Hampshire. I've really only, outside of summer jobs when I was a kid, have only had one job, and that's when I started Coed Sportswear right out of school. And Coed Sportswear, the name, some people always people ask me, why isn't it Coed Naked Sportswear? And because that's what we started with. I mean, that was the line that we started and purchased when I graduated from college, and I'll talk a little bit about how that happened. But we knew at some point down the road would be more than just Coed Naked, so we decided to be Coed Sportswear, and sure enough, that's paid off, because Coed Naked was what we started with, and then we hit some bumps in the road after a period of time, and now we've just recently relaunched it, which is going great. So that's kind of an interesting side note as well. But the history of Coed Naked is really what happened when I graduated from college.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about Coed Naked. I want to return to the relaunch in a little bit, but yeah. I think to really understand where it's at now, we got to go back.
Yeah,
to the beginning.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I was home for Thanksgiving break. I think it was probably my sophomore, junior year. And my brother, my mother was doing our laundry for us, and I was ready to go back to school. And in my pile of laundry was this Coed Naked shirt. It said Boston College Coed Naked Lacrosse, with this catchphrase, rough, tough, and in the buff. And I'd never seen it before. I loved it. I thought, wow, I've got to sneak that back to UNH, knowing it should have belonged in my brother's pile because it was his shirt. So I ended up taking it, and I just thought it was the most unique shirt. It was funny, it was catchy, it was somewhat controversial maybe, but just the words were just clever. And I remember thinking I'd be unusual at UNH wearing this shirt, and I was for a very short period of time, but then I started realizing and seeing Coed Naked shirts all over the place. Yeah. And what ended up happening is I met the kid who started this. It was a kid that didn't go to UNH, but lived in Durham. He went to the University of Colorado, and for essentially beer money, he started this, he created this Coed Naked Lacrosse, rough, tough, and in the buff. And buff stood for Colorado Buffaloes.
I love it.
And he sold enough shirts at school that he quit school, came back to Durham, and started this business selling the shirts. And that's where I got to know him. I met him through a mutual friend. And at the time, I was getting my Bachelor of Arts in History and my MBA combined. So I knew I wanted to be in business. And when I graduated, there was, all my classmates were going off to getting these, at the time, $40,000 a year jobs, which I thought was real big money. And I decided to take a job for $7.50 with this guy because I was just so intrigued by what he had done and what the potential for this Coed Naked
Mm-hmm.
was. I went to work for him in I'd say May of 1990 after I graduated. And I remember the date clearly. On August 23rd, 1990, I went and there were chains on the door. It looked like the entire thing was shut down. And what had happened is he was being, or at least the story goes, I don't have, this is what I gathered from the
Uh-huh.
situation. He was being sued by CLC, this collegiate licensing company, because he was putting university names on these shirts without a license. And
Yeah.
at 23 years old, he really didn't want to deal with that issue. So he closed the company down. And that was my opportunity, myself and a couple of partners, to purchase these words. And that's what we did. We purchased the words Coed Naked, the
Mm-hmm.
artwork, and um, and really that was it. And we started this business on a shoestring, essentially. But we believed that we could make it work and make it a
Mm-hmm.
national line. And what happened over the next couple of years were pretty crazy.
Tell me a little bit about that because, I had the opportunity to read your book, The Coed Naked Truth, and that journey is just so funny and fascinating. Like you said, I think the terms coed naked, that's kind of a controversial thing. And so do you think that that's why it exploded in popularity? I mean, what do you think was the motivating factor there?
Well, I mean, I think there was a bunch of things that happened.
Uh-huh.
I think well, first of all, it's funny. I don't like to give us a lot of credit because at
Yeah.
the time, and partly because we were young, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just throwing things at the wall. But I think the words "coed naked" are just they can be controversial, they can be
Mhm.
funny, they can be, risque. Um, I don't think they're offensive, and
Yeah.
we weren't trying to make offensive shirts. We were just trying to make something that, was funny. And
Mhm.
you combine that with a sport and like lacrosse or hockey or football or basketball, or an occupation like firefighting and
Yeah.
nursing. And we had shirts for everybody. And then you throw a little funny kind of double entendre catchphrase on it. And
Mhm.
it just made people happy and smile. And then I think um, but along the course of starting this business, we did some things that kind of pushed it into the marketplace where it exploded.
Mhm.
But the beginning was difficult. I mean, we started the company in October of 1990, and by the end of the year, December of 1990, my accountant told us we had $700 left and it was time
Mhm.
to, shut the doors. And we didn't have much to start with. We started with $46,000.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and that was just money we borrowed from the bank, and we had a third partner that threw in 20,000. We ended up with $46,000, and uh, we found out very quickly that $46,000 doesn't get you much. Doesn't go a long way, especially with limited sales.
Uh-huh.
But we took that $700 and flew to Florida, and we decided we were going to knock on every single retail store from Daytona to Fort Lauderdale, and that's what we did. We rented a car, we knocked on every single door. We got down to about Palm Beach, I think it was, and we
Mhm.
realized we had every door we knocked on. They said, "Oh no, owner's not here or the buyer's not here. They're all in Orlando." And we're like, it took us, half of the state of Florida to realize that maybe we should be in Orlando. So we turned the car around, went to Orlando, and that's where the surf show was. It's
Uh-huh.
obviously a big apparel show. We didn't have a booth, obviously, but we had a couple samples and we walked around the show. And at the end of the first day, after having no luck, because, we were just trying to find anyone with a buyer badge, track them down. But, these guys are busy, so they didn't want anything to do with us. But we started at the end of the show when things quieted down. We were talking to a rep, and and we, this rep, we showed him the line and said, he asked us what we were up to, and we showed him couple Coed Naked samples. And he said the magic words, which was, "I've heard of that." And
Uh-huh.
so I was like, "Oh yeah." And then he says, "Do you have anyone repping in Florida?" And we said, "Well, what part of Florida you're from?" Of course, we had the entire country was open, but um, But we had to make ourselves look bigger than
Huh?
we were. But long story short, and this is all in the book as well, but long story short is that he took on the line, and by the time we flew back to New Hampshire, we had a lot of orders on the fax machine. So by the end, that was in probably, I guess it was January of 1991. So by
Mhm.
the end of 1991, we had $1 million in sales, which was way more than we expected.
Yeah.
By the end of 92, we ended up at 2.5 million. By the end of 93, we were at 7 million. And
Wow.
then by the end of 94, we were at 23 million. And and then everything good happened.
Mhm.
We were nominated for Entrepreneurs of the Year, Young Entrepreneur of the Year, because we were under 28 years old or something. And
Nice.
we won the New Hampshire Entrepreneur of the Year, which meant we were eligible for the regional one. We won that
Mhm.
remarkably, and then we ended up winning the national one. And in May of '95, we were invited to the White House uh, for a Rose Garden ceremony with President
Wow.
Clinton. It was like we were on top of the world. We couldn't do anything wrong.
What an amazing pivot from $700 in the bank, closing your doors, to
Yeah.
standing in the White House.
Yeah, and the crazy thing was is in that first quarter of '95, we had doubled our '94 business, and we were on pace to do 50 million. Um,
Wild.
and in that same month, that May of '95, we not only were celebrated at the White House, but we moved our facility to for the third time to a 60,000 square foot facility to accommodate all the business. And we had just purchased our own screen printer, and we had done all kinds of things. We were sponsoring a race car in a fairly large series, which was kind of
Yeah.
cool. Um, but you know, but May also, as great as that month was, remarkably, it marked the kind of the end of this huge ride, and and there was a lot of reasons why we grew to that level, but there
Mhm.
was also a lot of reasons why the line started to suffer after that May day.
Yeah,
So
let's talk about that a little bit, because I think, the story you're describing, I think, is every entrepreneur's dream, especially
yeah,
when you talk about a lot of apparel decorators or people who are launching their own apparel brands, whatever, their finger is in the apparel industry. Who doesn't love that exponential growth, that massive growth? Everybody loves you. They want your shirts. Um, what
yeah.
happened?
I mean, it was a little bit unrealistic, and we were you know, from my perspective, all I had to do was show up at work and we sold t-shirts.
Yeah.
I had way too big an ego. I was 20, whatever, 7 years old,
Mhm.
and everything we did just turned into more sales. And we had done some things that really increased our presence in the marketplace. We started this 24-hour shipping, no minimum order. And at that time, we had like 40 or 50 designs when we started that. So you think about it from a
Yeah.
retail perspective, prior to um, prior to this program, we required our retailers to order 48 pieces per design
Mhm.
to justify a screen print run.
Mhm.
But when we stocked everything, we said you can order one piece. And so the result of that is instead of having, one or two facings on their walls of our stuff and then waiting for it to sell through, after a month or two and then reordering,
Mhm.
these guys started ordering 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15 different designs, and they just didn't buy as many. So we started to own the walls on retailers. And and like I alluded to earlier, there was something for everybody. So if you were a nurse or a firefighter or a hockey player,
Yeah.
there was a shirt for you. And we got all kinds of fan mail asking for new designs, and it was a crazy ride. And um, but we're also young, and um, we felt we were bulletproof.
Mhm.
And we didn't look at the signs at the time that suggested that, hey, this thing doesn't, may end someday. And there was a lot of signs. There was a lot of signs. And those signs included, probably the biggest ones were um, there was a lot of high schools that were changing their um, their policy about what you can wear
Yeah.
at schools. And they, because Coed Naked was so big at the time, and when I say big, in that period of time, in the early to mid to late 90s, we sold 10 million t-shirts. I mean, it was a crazy number. And
Unbelievable.
so Coed Naked was everywhere, and the kids were wearing them to high school. And there was one situation in the state of Massachusetts where one of the students sued his own school for making him in not allowing him to wear our shirt,
Uh-huh.
and he won. And when you tell a high school kid what not to wear, they want to wear it more.
Right.
So between 93, that whole thing started, to 95, our sales went through the roof. But
Mhm.
by 95, it started to catch up to us, because there were articles all over the country about, these new policies at schools, and Coed Naked was always mentioned in them. And and we weren't the only one, but
Right.
the schools really cut down on it. So I think parents stopped bringing their buying Coed Naked shirts for back to school
Uh-huh.
all of a sudden. But there are other things too. It was, we were oversaturated. We weren't smart enough to realize that we
Mhm.
should protect our customers better, our retailers.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a host of reasons.
Sure. And I think, that goes with the territory of I think owning any small business is there's always going to be like those challenges and those signs, and I think part of the challenge is recognizing those. And again, all of you listeners out there, you can get the details in the book, The Coed Naked Truth. But your story doesn't stop there. And that's what
No,
I really want to talk more about is, talking about the years after Coed Naked's, big heyday, quote unquote.
yeah.
What's it been like up until now?
Well, it's been interesting. And it's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is because
Yeah.
I, for those first 5 years, like I've said, we were bulletproof, and we were blind to how to actually run a business. And we spent wildly. We wanted the biggest and best of everything. The race car that we sponsored, that was a lot of fun, but was it the right thing to do? And it's we just weren't frugal by any stretch of the
Mm,
imagination. And why would you be, when all you did was have success for 5 straight years? And
mhm.
but it turned around very quickly. And instead of doing the 50 million in 1995 like we were on pace to do, we ended up at 17 million. And that was a real shot in the arm, or a real blow, I should say,
Yeah.
because the reality was, at that time we had to purchase over $5 million worth of inventory to satisfy that initial initial demand
Yeah.
of potentially 50,000 units, or 50,000 $50 million worth of merchandise.
Oof.
And at the end of the year, we were stuck with all this obsolescence, and we owed the bank $5 million.
Oof.
So we learned quickly how to become businessmen.
Mhm.
Uh, and really, over the next 15 to 20 years, I know that's a big stretch of time, but we changed the company's really the mission statement of the company over 3 different times, and the model. And the first one was fairly simple. We had this huge Coed Naked distribution channel, and we took full advantage of it. And
Mhm.
what we did is we created our own new designs that were less controversial than Coed Naked. And we hadn't retired Coed Naked, but we kept selling it. But along with it, we brought in some tamer concepts,
Yeah.
and we also licensed a lot of concepts, and we brought all those to the market and took advantage of the fact that we had over 12,000 retail doors across the United States and Canada. The
Mhm.
problem was nothing was as good as Coed Naked, so we could never satisfy this huge organization that we had created. Uh,
Mhm.
and that that process really lasted about 5 years, because by the year 2000, our sales had gone from that peak of 23 million in 1994 down to 3 million in the year
Wow.
2000. So you can see where, we had to completely do an about face
Mhm.
and figure out what the business was all about. So really in 2000, we started this kind of second generation of a business model, and we moved into taking those same designs that we were putting into our essentially our mom and pop 12,000 retail stores and moving them into larger uh, retailers like the J.C. Penney's of the world and the Macy's and the Dick's Sporting Goods and all of these kind of big box stores as well.
Mhm.
Uh, and we did that because there was a significant change in the market, and this is again another reason why I wrote the book. And it's to just give people an understanding that things change. They can change quickly, and they can change year to year, and
Mhm.
economics change, banking situations change, markets change. And at that time in 2000, our 12,000 retail stores had diminished to about 800. And it's really because they changed the way they were doing business. Big box stores and malls were growing, and that was putting a lot of pressure on small mom and pops that were going out of business.
Mhm.
And so it was just a completely different era. So we went through this next 10 years is really the era of us selling into the big department stores and big box stores. Um, and that ended as well. And by 2008, so we had built our sales back up over that period of time. We are back up to not 23 million, but we got up to 8-9 million dollars in revenue, which was good. And we had a business model that allowed us to be profitable under that type of volume. Um, but then, just when things are going right there, you have the banking crisis of 2008
Uh-huh.
and all this consolidation of retail. And um, we literally lost our banking relationship. We didn't owe them $5 million anymore, thankfully. We only owed them about 850,000 or something like that.
It's
So it's
better.
still significant, but but they didn't want to take the risk with us anymore because we were doing business with retail, and retail was getting killed. And
Mhm.
so our particular bank was just retail adverse at that point. And so that was that really started this whole another business model opportunity for us, because we literally went bankless for let's see, from 2008 to 2014, so 6 years without
That's
a
wild.
relationship.
I just have to say, like, when I read that part in your book, I was like, how did y'all manage? Like, that is just
Wow.
wild to me.
It was crazy. I mean, it was very stressful because I literally had to go to the bank every quarter and pray that they weren't just going to call the note, because we couldn't pay it back. Anyone who lived through 2008 and you're a small business understood how difficult it was. And
Mhm.
and because it was a banking crisis, banks just weren't willing to lend money. And so we couldn't be profitable. Our business with our retailers diminished again because of a lot of reasons. Consolidation. There's a ton of consolidation with the major, the large box stores and the major sporting goods stores and so forth. And so we had lost a lot of our customers, and they were difficult to deal with too. And I talk about that in the book as well. I mean, we
Yeah.
were we were vendor of the year for Dick's Sporting Goods in 2006 and in 2007, because we're not Nike or Reebok or one of their big brands, they tried to take our program overseas.
Uh,
And so thanks for being vendor of the year. This is what we're going to do. And,
right.
but that's the kind of difficulty we were facing.
Mhm.
And but as far as the bank, the bank, I guess you can thank Coed Naked a lot for the, survive, because we had made enough money in the Coed Naked days where, as
Mhm.
owners of the business, we were self-banking ourselves.
Wow.
And which wasn't easy. There were 3 or 4 times over the course of a 10-year period where I seriously debated whether or not this was what we wanted to do. But things turned around again. And by 2012, we had some, or really 2010, we had some ownership changes. We had bought
Mhm.
out a partner. Um, I'd taken on a new partner, which was one of the smartest things I did, because the new partner was our best leading sales guy.
Mhm.
Uh, so it made a lot of sense to bring him on. And, together we changed the business model again. And really, instead of going after the major department stores and big box stores, we decided to go after some of the brands that they work with and
Okay.
work with those guys. And
Mhm.
that ended up becoming a phenomenally good business model. The model that we still it's a model that's still working today. So, 13 years later, I think we
Uh-huh.
found a sustainable business model. Um, but even that has its, that all has its, you have to be careful even during those times too, because we had our best year since 1994 in 2019 in terms of
Okay.
revenue, in terms of profitability,
Mhm.
and we went into 2000 on fire again, and we had a sustained level of profitability and growth, I think, for 6 straight years in a row up to 2019.
Mhm.
2020 looked great. And then, in March of 2020, we all know what happened.
Well, ugh.
In fact,
Everyone shut
yeah,
down. Shut her
exactly.
down.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I had started writing this book um, towards the tail end of 2018 and into
Okay.
2019, because we were on such a
Yeah.
ride. I wanted to share, you know, how over these 20, 30 years we were able to sustain ourselves. And
Mhm.
I literally was ready to publish the book and said, because the ending was a happy ending, right?
Yeah.
We found our business model, it was going to work, and nothing seemed to be able to get into the way. And then, reality strikes again with
Uh,
COVID. So
yeah, I think that kind of big slap in the face across the whole world is
yeah.
who knows, right? And you talk a lot about that change in the book. My question to you is, through all of this journey, 90s to today, 2023, biggest lesson or lessons that you have taken away from running a business, managing a business, growing a business?
Yeah, and this isn't meant to scare young entrepreneurs or anything like that, but it's really about really understanding not just your business, but the markets that you're working in, and
Mm,
understanding that, especially in this day and age, how quickly things change,
yeah.
right? So when we started in 1990, I mean, we barely had a working computer because they weren't readily available, right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, it was kind of a new thing. We'd go to trade shows, and we'd call home once a day if we were lucky, because the line at the payphone was too long. So everything changes, and technology has changed so dramatically, and the way we do
Mm-hmm.
business. I mean, who would have thought in 1990 that the internet would be the primary way you potentially sell product in this day and age.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had the internet back then and we were selling at retail prices, I I mean, I can't even imagine how
Right.
well it would have been. But so I think the message is that you never know what is going to be that bump in the road for you, or
Mhm.
or that crash for you, because
Mhm.
there's always, so you just have to keep your, be aware of that and prepare for that and plan for that, because if you don't plan for the negative things that can happen in your business, and it could be as simple as losing a customer, it
Sure.
could be more complicated like COVID, it could be just a change in the way the market retail is,
Mhm.
going from primary selling to retail to primary selling online.
Yeah.
uh, and there's all kinds of different things. I mean, we face issues today with inflation.
Yeah.
uh, and to buy a t-shirt today and to print a t-shirt today, and the labor that it takes to produce a garment today is significantly more than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So you just have to be aware of that. You have to plan for it. You have to understand it, and you have to almost enjoy that challenge, of what's going to be
Yeah.
next and how can I overcome it. Uh, and we've had our challenges for sure, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, though.
Yeah. I love that. I think there are probably more than one other apparel person listening to this, nodding along with you, saying, "Yep, this makes total sense," especially with the inflation topic and all of that stuff. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
yep, yep.
I've talked to a lot of people in the industry, and now that I'm older and more sophisticated, I like to give back a little bit. And I
Yeah.
do like to talk to people that are starting out. And I've done a lot of speaking at colleges and to business classes. And I did a speaking um, uh, engagement down at the show in Atlantic City just recently
Nice. Hmm.
with Rick Roth, his group. And
Huh.
I love doing that kind of thing, because there's a lot of people that do have questions, and they want to find information. And again, it's another reason why I wrote the book, is because
Yeah.
to me, to a certain extent, it's a way of giving back. It's not to scare young at the business school lectures that I've given. It's not to scare those kids. It's to make them aware that there's a lot of great things that can come out of owning your own small business, but it's
Hmm.
not easy either, and you have to be willing to put the time and the effort into it, and be able to deal with the challenges.
Absolutely. So my final question is actually two questions in one.
Yeah.
First question, I promised we were going to talk about it. You're resurrecting the Coed Naked
Yeah.
brand. Woo
Yes.
woo. So
Yeah.
let's talk
So,
about that just briefly. Where
yeah.
can we
So
find it?
I've wanted to do that for a long time,
Uh-huh.
and there were three things that happened fairly recently, that kind of made me want to do it. And one was that we were on a television show called Yellow Jackets.
Uh-huh.
And when I say that, the very first, I think it's the first scene in Yellow Jackets. I think it's a Netflix series or something, one of those
Yeah.
series. A plane crashes, and there's a girls' soccer team on the plane, and one of the girls is hanging from a tree with a Coed Naked shirt.
Oh
So,
my.
so that was sign one, because we used to be on television and radio a lot, and to
Hmm.
have that was great. The second thing is I got a fan mail. We used to get fan mail all the time, and randomly some guy sent us notes saying, "Hey, I want the Coed Naked this and that," so I was like, okay, that's two things. But you're
Yeah.
always waiting for that third one, and the third one is that this kid from UNH, where I went to school, where I was discovered Coed Naked in the first place, came in, and he had created his own line. And in the spirit of giving back, I wanted to help this kid out. And so he had his own line.
Love it.
He so he I thought what he had was okay, but I was be surprised if he made any money on it.
Hmm.
Um, Turns out it was a line called Coastal Kooks. He started at the University of New Hampshire. I printed the first group of designs for him. He sold out immediately. By After a year of working with this kid, he had sold over $200,000 worth of Coastal Kooks at the University
Oh,
of New Hampshire. So I was like, oh boy, this reminds me of Coed Naked.
yeah.
So one day he came in because he wanted some more Coastal Kook stuff. I was showing him around the building, and he saw all the Coed Naked memorabilia, and he asked me what it was, and I explained it to him, and he said, "I love that shirt. I need to relaunch it. So that was the easy number 3 reason why we wanted to relaunch. So we did last summer, kind of a soft launch online.
Mm-hmm.
So it's at coednaked.com for anyone that's interested in checking it out. We started by launching the original designs. We will probably add this summer some of the retro designs as well.
Ooh, I got my eyes on that then. I'm watching for it.
Yeah, but it's doing very well. We've gotten back into retail as well, which is fun and
Wow.
interesting. So it's beating my expectations. So I didn't know what to expect, and I'm pretty happy with it.
Great. Oh, that's a story at this point has a happy ending. It's probably not the ending, but right
Exactly.
now, very happy note. Last question. You mentioned you like to really help everybody out. You wrote the book for that reason, The Coed Naked Truth and the Triumph and Pitfalls of Owning a Small Business. Where do people
Yep.
find that book?
Well, you can get it at coednaked.com,
Mm-hmm.
or you can buy it on Amazon. So either one. I encourage people to go to coednaked.com and check out our blogs and a little bit more about the history of Coed Naked, because there's a lot on there. But you can get the book there. But if not, and you got an Amazon account, you can get it there as well. So
Great, Mark. Well, thank you
yeah.
so much. Your story's a good one. I hope all of you apparelist listeners out there check out the book. I read it in less than 48 hours, people. It was so good. You can learn a lot of lessons and hopefully get inspired and get your business rolling. Until our next episode, we'll talk to y'all later. Head on over to apparelist.com. You can learn more there. Mark, thanks again.
I appreciate the time. I appreciate it very much.